Hello, everyone. My name is Vrinda, and welcome to Book Nook Chats. So, this is kind of a new segment I'm thinking of starting on my channel, which is going to be casual conversations and thoughtful discussions on bookish things, on reading, on storytelling. And I think that might include movies and TV shows also at times. These are the kind of conversations I end up having with my friends. And I thought it would be great if I could open this space up to a wider audience and have this conversation with all of you. So I would love to hear your thoughts and perspectives as we go on these topic-based discussions. In today's video, I really wanted to talk about reading in different formats. The three main formats of reading are physical books, ebooks, and audiobooks. But outside of this, I also wanted to talk about some experiential reading methods, such as reading with music on in the background, immersion reading, so listening to audiobooks while reading, doing sprint readings with a group of people, and also reading a book as part of a club. As I've gotten back into reading again this year, it has been a really fun and interesting process as I've gotten connected with more of the reading community online. That has also exposed me to different ways that people read. And so I decided to personally experiment with a lot of these ways of reading over the past couple of months. And I have my thoughts about things that I enjoyed with it or things that I didn't enjoy with it. And I'd love to hear from you. What is your preferred reading format? I don't know if I can pick one, honestly. I think I see the benefit of all these different ways of reading, and they kind of click with me at a different point in time, depending on my mood. I am a big mood reader. So if you're a mood reader too, let me know down below. So I do like to change up the dynamics. But starting off, let's talk about the classic fundamental way of reading, which was with physical books. I don't think this is never going to go out of style. I think this is one of the best, most satisfying ways of reading. And I was thinking about why that is. One of the reasons I believe is because it's such a multi-sensory and tactile experience. When you're holding a book in your hand, it's the feel of the book, the weight of the book, the feel of the pages when you're turning them, the sound of the pages, and visually also the way you're able to see the story flowing over the pages, even the choices that people might make as writers on how they arrange certain information or how they present certain information to you in terms of how it's structured. Like recently, I read a book which had footnotes. And so I read it as an ebook. And for that, I had to click through to the end of the chapter to take a look at the footnote and then come back to where I was reading. So these are kind of little things that when you're reading in the book, the way it was intended to be read, it is a different experience than if you would listen to it in an audiobook or in an ebook. One of the things that I find really great about reading physically is that there is this level of engagement with the book that I don't find in my own personal reading being quite the same in ebooks or audiobooks. For example, if I'm reading something and maybe I've forgotten something, I can easily flip back and forth through the book to find whatever it is that I want to find. And so, in terms of building details and being engaged, that's so much easier to do in a book, especially with fantasy books, which I do read quite a lot of. I find the most integral aspect, which is going back to the map. If I am reading a fantasy book, physically, I flip back to the map so many times. I love getting a sense of where the characters are, what their movement is like, where they're at in their journey. And this is just something that is not easy to do. When I read fantasy books as ebooks, I just do not flip back to the map that often. And I do feel like I'm missing out on something in that way. Let me know if there's a way or process or a mindset shift that you have that enables you to engage with a book in a similar way, even in the ebook format. I do know that these tactile kind of or multisensory experiences, ebooks, e-readers often try to imbibe that in their functionality. So they'll have that sound of flipping pages or so many other things that you can set up, or like just the corner and you get the feel of turning pages and little features like that. So I think that's really nice. One thing about physical books, I will also say is that there's a sense of memory I find associated with where something's at with a physical book that I don't think is quite the same with any other format. In my mind, I can place where I had read something. And this is especially something that I would experience when I used to study through my academic journey, where if I've read a textbook, I will know exactly where. Let me know if you guys are like that too, and if you have a similar kind of experience. So I do find that with physical books, that memory associated with it is much stronger. Another very satisfying element of reading physical books is that you can see your progress. You can really experience your progress. So if you're halfway through the book, you feel that sense of accomplishment in having completed that particular chunk, and you know exactly how much is left. Also, in terms of chapters, you kind of have this sense you can quickly flip and see how many pages you have left. Of course, these elements do exist in audiobooks and in ebooks as well, where you get a percentage of how much you're through. But this is just a very physical sense of where you're at in the book and your experience of reading it. So these are things that I feel like work in the favor of reading physical books. One more element of reading physical books is reading hardcover books and reading paperbacks. I think hardcover books feel so luxurious somehow and very um, full and like just it's the weight of it. I think they're great for collecting books, especially ones that you enjoy and or you want to have around for a long time, or maybe you prefer reading hardback books. I definitely know that reading a collector's edition or reading a hardback, it feels really good. But in terms of practically, I think a paperback novel, there's a sense of carefree comfort that comes with it that I don't feel with a hardcover. And also, somehow, with a hardcover book, especially if it's a collector's edition or it has sprayed edges, I'm just more nervous in terms of handling the book and where I can read it, when I can read it. It's a little bit more restrictive in that sense. But with a paperback, it's very easy to hold it up. It's to sit down with it. It feels very cozy. And I love the feeling of a good paperback novel. Within paperback novels, I will say I love the floppy kinds. I think they have just as much of a longevity and I love the ones that just kind of fall flat and they open. Some paperback novels, maybe the older kinds or just certain maybe quality isn't as good, and I don't like those personally because the pages over a period of time can start coming out. The binding isn't so secure, and so I do. If I buy a book, I do want it to be bound well. Let me know, what do you prefer? Do you prefer paperbacks or do you prefer hardcovers, and what's the reason? Moving into ebooks, I think ebooks are really great for their sense of accessibility. I do travel a lot, and it is very easy to have this available on any and all devices. You also can get access to a story with the click of a button instantly, and that's amazing. There's no wait time if you're really eager to get to something, and you're never going to find yourself without a book, and you can have a vast library of books. For me, I know that I don't own a lot of books. I don't buy a lot of books. So if you're somebody like that, maybe ebooks are a better way to have access to a larger number of books. It can be for so many reasons. Maybe you don't have space, maybe you move around a lot, maybe it's just more convenient to have it as an ebook reader. One thing I do find easier with an ebook is when you're reading at night, it's so much easier to have this. You don't have to have the lights on. You just have your e-reader. One of the things that I really enjoy with ebooks is the fact that I can annotate everything very easily. And maybe this is also to do with the fact that I don't buy a lot of books. So with ebooks, I have the freedom to really mark anything and everything that I like. I don't really have a setup for doing that with my physical books. And it's something that I might like to try and see how I feel about it. But I'm definitely not somebody who would be able to write in the book, especially not with a pen. The most I would feel comfortable doing is maybe with a pencil, underlining or writing something. But more than that, I don't mind marking with tabs, and I wouldn't mind having post-its on certain pages, kind of capturing my experience of reading or my reaction to do with those scenes. Or if I had some key takeaways or themes, I could have a note there for my reference. And I think that creates a really interesting, engaging experience, even when you look back on the book, or maybe if you come back to reread it. It's nice to look back on what you initially thought about the book. One key con or drawback with ebooks I find is that you don't own an ebook when you purchase it. And sometimes I feel the ebooks are priced the same as the paperback novels. And from one perspective, I can understand why that could be the case. You could argue that the value of the content is the same. But when this situation does happen, I'd much rather buy a paperback novel because I own that. I can lend it to somebody, I can donate it if I like, I can resell it, and actually I can get back whatever I invested into the book. And that's just something you can't do with ebooks. So I understand the challenges with ebooks and the copyrights, but it is a drawback because you never own those books, which is why I absolutely love libraries. I mean, if I can find libraries or borrowing books, I think it's just such a great social um, element to societies where you're able to share knowledge in that way and create access to it. I think libraries are amazing, amazing resources for all communities. Moving on to audiobooks. So I'm very familiar and very comfortable with listening to podcasts and other audio resources, whether it's lectures, classes, but I had never really heard an entire story or novel as an audiobook. And initially, I struggled with this because I'm so used to my own voice when I'm reading, and I enjoy that. I will say that I like the quiet of being able to sit down with a book and just being in my own mind with what I'm reading. And so it's just me, the words on the pages, and I'm fully engaged in that way. So I'm very comfortable with my head voice. But when it comes to audiobooks, I found that there were times where I was maybe more restless or busier. So it was really easy and really engaging to be listening to audiobooks at that time. I think I wouldn't listen to all books as audiobooks because books that have more detail or require me to be more engaged, I think I wouldn't be able to listen to them as audiobooks because I wouldn't be able to pay as much attention. But the kind of novels which are more entertaining in nature or lighter in nature, those are the ones that I enjoy listening to as audiobooks because it's just fun. It's like you're being told a story. Here, I will say that the narration or the narrative voice is really important. Like you have to feel comfortable with it. It's very subjective. The way they do the intonations, the voices for characters, the dialogue, the delivery, it's very specific. And so I have found that there are some audiobooks that I just don't connect with and I wouldn't want to listen to. But there are a few that I heard which were so good in the way that they did the dialogues and voices and characterizations that I found that when I switched back to reading, I did it the same way. So I definitely think it adds a lot of interest and a lot of a different kind of experience to reading. In terms of audiobook speeds, when I'm reading and I'm paying attention, I've found that again, depending on the speed of the narrator, mostly I find that it's kind of like around 1.75. That's where my average reading speed is at. So if I am doing, let's say, immersion reading, where I am reading the book at the same time, this I find is really helpful if you want to read, but you're finding yourself feeling distracted or you're not able to be as engaged. I think for me, I found that this really helped to have the audiobook on as well as the book in front of me. It's just it helps your brain to focus in on what you're reading. So I found that that speed works the best for me. But if I'm doing an activity, it depends what activity I'm doing. If I'm doing something that I don't have to think about, let's say washing the dishes or something like that, then I can have the audiobook on at a faster speed and I can continue to engage with it. But if I'm doing an activity like driving, where I need to pay attention to what I'm doing in my surroundings, there I find that audiobooks at its normal speed or max 1.25 if it's very slow just works fine for me. I know some people who listen to audiobooks even faster than this, more than 2x speed. um, I don't think I would be able to do that. I mean, 2x feels like too much. I don't think I usually go over 1.8. I think that's where I cap it at and I stop because yeah, again, it depends what genre you're listening to, what kind of book you're listening to. With fantasy books, I also find that audiobooks are not as I'm not very comfortable with listening to audiobooks just because there's more of a sense of world building and a lot of things going on. And so those descriptions, those aspects, I feel I'm better engaged with, and I can better remember if I read it rather than listen to it. I think non-fantasy books or lighter fantasy books, like some middle grade fantasy, those are the ones I've tried to listen um, to as audiobooks, and I really enjoyed my process of doing that. So I like having a mix. I like having an audiobook, an ebook at hand, and a physical book so that I have kind of the best of all worlds. um, okay, coming to reading with music on in the background, I think this is experientially such a great way. It feels intuitive if you think about it from the point of view of when you're watching movies, and there is music in the background. I think music is just so beautiful in the way that it helps you to connect with your emotions, right? And that is one thing that I find when when I put on some music with what I'm reading. I find it kind of pulls me in and creates a more immersive experience, and I love that. But for this, the music has to be just right because scene to scene, the tone of the story also changes. So this doesn't work for me with everything, but there are some really great playlists that people create for certain books, and I love kind of exploring those playlists and maybe identifying a couple of tracks or maybe just switching it around if I feel it's not sitting well with me, but just kind of moving around in the playlist to find something that fits. But usually it works when I have some bass track which kind of captures the mood essentially of the story, and I can have it on in the background or have it on for certain scenes. So I don't listen to entire books with a music on in the background just because I feel the music doesn't fit for everything. And like I said, I do enjoy my quiet space of reading, like just being with myself, being in my own mind and my own voice, and that's it, nothing else. But these are all ways that help me to read, especially when maybe I am more restless or I'm having trouble focusing. And it just creates a nice, interesting experience. Now, coming to doing live sprints and book clubs, last month was the first time I really got into doing some live sprints, and I had such an amazing time. I think I like doing this with smaller groups where I feel like I can have more of a conversation because it feels like friends hanging out and everybody's reading different things, but you're doing the same activity together. So I think it's nice. It's kind of motivating to put yourself in a space where you're doing the same activity or you're doing something related to it, and you can in between check in on each other every 30 minutes or 40 minutes, whatever it is, and just have a conversation about what you read, how you felt about it, or the reading that you got done. So I think that's a really nice aspect of live sprints, that sense of togetherness and doing something that everybody enjoys doing. When it comes to book clubs, I think this is a great space because you can really have time to discuss themes and reactions to various events that are happening more on a chapter to chapter basis. I did a buddy read last month and had such an amazing time doing more of an in-depth discussion and reading the book at the same time. Fable book clubs are really fun. There's one book club that's kind of my favorite, which is Enchanting Escapes, moderated by Demi. And I love the way she kind of creates playlists for whatever books are picked. And then she also creates discussion questions at the end of the month. So I feel like it creates a really interesting, thoughtful, engaging experience with reading. And that's something that I really enjoy. Moving forward, I also don't want to be as focused on reading more books rather than reading fewer but good books, every month, and really improving the quality of my reading. I think that covers everything that I wanted to touch upon. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time. Bye.